The proposed film will utilise vlogs, home videos and first-person narration to produce a longitudinal, autobiographical documentary. Patricia Afterhyde writes quite simply that a documentary tells a story about real life, and this film does just that. This film tells my story of growing up with cystic fibrosis, a progressive disease which I believed within my life before I reached adulthood. This film is inspired by the field of medical sociology and sociologists such as Javi Carrel, whose work on the sociology of illness perfectly encompasses much of what I document in my film. She writes that illness requires serious effort and continuous work to adapt practically to its limitations and to adjust psychologically to the pain, restricted horizons and frustration it brings. It forces the ill person and those around her to confront her mortality at its most direct and bare manifestation. At the beginning of the film, I will discuss how the progressive nature of the disease meant that throughout my teenage years, I slowly lost the ability to do the things I once loved, such as gymnastics, and how this shift in identity from young athlete to a sick person had a significant effect on my sense of self and led to profound questions about the meaning of my life. This experience can be thought of in terms of Talcott Parsons' concept of the sick role, which argues that to be sick is both a biologically and socially altered state. Parsons argues that the sick role constitutes a culturally specific ideal-typical response to illness, which assumes that the person should want to get well and therefore should do their utmost to cooperate with medical help. The film demonstrates how this contradicts with my own experience as I struggled to comply with my prescribed medical regime, and how this lack of motivation to work on my health was due in large part to the knowledge that despite my efforts, I could not truly prevent my inevitable decline and premature death. Another part of this film focuses on the topic of purpose, as I struggled to see where I fit into society as someone with a chronic illness. Although I didn't expect to live beyond my teenage years, I wanted to contribute something to the world, or at the very least to know that I had tried my best to do so. I felt at the time that to focus solely on my own survival was selfish. This could be attributed in some part to labelling theory. Friedson argues that a person's sick role privileges, that is to say the extent to which they are exempted from work and societal expectations, will depend on both the seriousness and perceived legitimacy of their illness. As someone with an invisible illness, the severity of my condition was regularly questioned, and therefore I did not feel I was granted the privilege to focus on my health. In more recent years, the choice to identify as a disabled person was a liberating one, because I felt that it provided a level of legitimacy to my experience and somewhat alleviated the pressure to conform to typical societal pressures which I had come to accept were not attainable for me at that time. The second half of this film will take a very different turn. In July of 2019, a so-called miracle drug called Kaftrio was approved on the NHS, which was to change the course of my life. This drug would quite simply save me. However, as you will see in the film, instead of the elation that everyone expected me to feel, instead, I was terrified. I had prepared myself my entire life to die, and had not planned a life for myself beyond this point. In the latter half of the film, you will follow my journey as I attempt to embrace my newfound future and rediscover my identity outside of the chronic illness which had come to define me. One way that I'll demonstrate this shift from dying to thriving is by recreating some of the old footage featured in the pre-Kaftrio half of the film. The physical effects of the drug on my organs cannot be seen by looking at me, therefore this footage will provide a visual aid for the audience to understand the effects that the drug has had on my day-to-day life. One piece of footage that will be recreated is of me exercising. The newer footage will clearly show a fitter, healthier version of myself and demonstrate how Kaftrio has enabled me to reclaim my identity as an athlete. A large part of the film will be composed of pre-existing vlog footage, some of which, but not all, has been posted to YouTube. In Goffman's work on the presentation of the self, he uses a theoretical metaphor to argue that social interactions are a stage in which people present different versions of themselves, and that the backstage is where a person's true self is revealed. There has been much debate around whether a vlog should be considered an on-stage performance. However, in my case I feel that the vlogs featured in this film accurately depict my true self. In order to remain authentic, I treated my vlogs primarily as a form of personal journal, often making the decision to upload them to the internet months later, if and only if I felt comfortable doing so. For this reason, the footage is naturalistic in style because the lighting and background of any given shot will depend solely on the location and time of day that I happen to be filming. The film is also Vehetian in nature, as termed by Max Weber, because it takes the audience on a journey which enables them to walk in my shoes, so to speak. As much of the footage is pre-filmed, the editing of the footage is crucial to ensuring that the film conveys my story in a coherent and engaging manner. One way that this will be done is through the music, which will be played quietly in the background of the videos. The music will mimic the tone of the clips, with the general sequence consisting of music that becomes increasingly dark and intense with my declining health, and then changes to light, optimistic music in the post-Kaftrio half of the film. The music will be obtained through the YouTube library to prevent any copyright issues. Video compilations will be used to provide an overview of particular periods of time. For example, one compilation will encompass my time at university with various clips of me working whilst doing treatments at home or in the hospital. This compilation will demonstrate the ever-present nature of cystic fibrosis as I attempt to continue with regular aspects of my life. Aside from myself, there are only a couple of clips featuring family members. As these are already in the public domain on YouTube, I do not require consent to use them in my film. The main area of ethical consideration is placing a trigger warning at the beginning of my film which states that I will be discussing topics such as chronic illness, treatment compliance, and suicidal ideation so that those who might be negatively affected by the content featured have the choice not to watch. This film is unique because it challenges commonly held beliefs about chronic illness. Throughout my life, I have often experienced feelings of guilt and shame for feeling emotions which contradict with what I was expected to feel by those around me and wider society. As I embark on my new life in the wake of Kaftrio, I wanted to make this video, which to me signifies the closing of this dark chapter and the start of what I hope will be a long and happy life.